Welcome back to Directly Current, the EV Politics Podcast. I'm your host, Max Patton. It's 2025, and we're standing at a very interesting fork in the road. The undisputed leader in electric vehicles, at least in the US, Tesla, is very much in the crosshairs at the moment between a huge brand and image issue and the role of a big Elon Musk, and also arguably a stale product lineup and lagging sales, in particular in Europe and China. So to discuss this, we're bringing on a guest from many episodes ago and a good friend of mine, Andrew Lambrecht, who is a graduating senior at Clemson University. He's an engineer. He's interned at Lucid Motors. He owns and daily drives a Tesla Model 3. And he's a keen observer of the used EV market because I don't even know how many different used EVs he's owned or price tracked, but he's renting and reviewing them all the time. And he's written before for Inside EVs and many other publications, so he has a very good idea of the market. Now, we're going to discuss Musk's role at Tesla, and is Elon hurting or harming Tesla at this moment? Is he helping? Could he come back? What Tesla's product lineup is like objectively, devoid of the politics conversation, and how the competition is maybe catching up. And for you listeners, as buying advice, let's say you can hold your nose and you're willing to get a cheap EV, including maybe a used Tesla, should you? And what does that look like? We're going to discuss all of this and how, of course, it relates as well to the political story playing out. So let's jump in. All right, Andrew, welcome back on to Directly Current. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Max. I appreciate it.
There's some people who are doing illegal vandalism. There's people who are doing legal protests against Tesla. Do you feel that pressure, or do you feel any kind of tension just driving around your car?
Yeah, so I guess looking at that question, I think I've always felt tension just like driving in an EV. And I think because Tesla vandalism is like nothing new. And it used to be people in the past who didn't like EVs and they would just go around keying them. And now it's happening, but through a different motive. And it's really interesting just seeing this. But I guess to answer your question, like right now, I'm like, I guess I feel like when I'm driving around and even always like down south, whenever I see like a big pickup truck, like people roll coal on you sometimes. It's not that uncommon. I just don't really care that much, frankly. But yeah, I guess I would feel like a little more pressure now, just like driving around. People probably might think of me a little differently. But to be honest, like it's going to sound bad, but I don't really care that much how some stranger like views me. But then again, yeah, if they key my car, I'd be a little irritated. But I think, yeah, the dynamics have shifted a little bit. Would I feel comfortable driving a Cybertruck through a very liberal city? Probably not. I would be a little cautious, like doing that through San Francisco. But I think like the Model 3, there's just so many of them on the road, Model 3 and Model Y, that I just don't think people care as much about them. I don't know. Do you have any strong opinions on how you would feel driving a Tesla now?
Yeah, no, I think it's fascinating. Like your point, like traditionally you'd get the EV haters, the people rolling coal. And I think those people still exist, though. Some of them might actually be driving Cybertrucks now because they love Elon. Who knows? But yeah, if you also have to worry about the people driving Priuses or Subarus who maybe feel very strongly. And again, I don't want to overcharacterize, like there's plenty of legal protests people do, but the vandalism has been on the rise. We've even seen it affect Tesla insurance rates. So you haven't felt any need to get a bumper sticker or something to ward them off. Like, I don't know. I guess in South Carolina it might be different. Maybe like that, like your point is valid that, yeah, even like here in Boulder, Colorado, tons of Model 3s and Model Ys. And I think vandalism is still a fringe thing, but it's still, I don't know, it's going to be in the back of people's mind, right? Like,
yeah, it is whenever I park and stuff. That's why like sometimes I always go to like end parking spots anyways, just because like you won't get door dinged or anything. But it always is on the back of my mind. So I always have Sentry mode on. But that's the nice thing about having Sentry mode is that like pretty much anyone who has vandalized a Tesla has been caught just because you get like a crisp picture of them. But yeah, it's like, it is, at least my take is, it's just, if you don't like something, it's not that hard to just let it go to the wayside in your brain and not let it consume you to the fact where you're going to cause $10,000 worth of damage on some random person's car who most likely even bought that vehicle used, like me. So yeah, I just think it's ridiculous to vandalize other people's property, just in general, and then even for this case.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's totally valid that also like the Model 3 and Model Y, it sends a very different message from a Cybertruck because it does just blend in to most places, I think. Such for good reason. popular vehicles. And yeah, now because a bunch of people are selling theirs and other reasons of EV depreciation, you can get them pretty cheap. Just from a like purely selfish consumer angle, like I know you bought your Model 3 a few months ago, but right now, let's say you weren't principled, you didn't have a stance on Elon, you were okay with the risk of getting keyed, you've got Sentry mode, whatever, and you want to get like a Model 3 or a Model Y that's lightly used, is now actually a pretty good time to buy one?
I think so, especially with because I was recently looking at Model Y prices used, and it's like I've seen Model Y performances from 2020. Now, granted, the build quality on the 2020s are not that great for the Model Ys. They're gonna have a lot of creaks and rattles, the suspension isn't great, etc. But still, it's a Model Y performance that you can get for like around 20 to 25,000 if you get the EV tax credit. Maybe a little higher miles, like 70, 80,000, but it's like that's such a good deal because you can't like a Mach-E GT in comparison would be in the upper 20s. So maybe 28, 29, 30, that price range. Whereas Model Y is so much cheaper than that. And you get insane performance. Same thing with the Model 3. Like I bought mine last summer for around in the low 20s with the tax credit. And that's a long range, all-wheel drive with the acceleration boost. And it is a lot of performance, a lot of just value you get for the money. And especially with all the connected software features, I think that just buying a used Tesla makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I want to bring that up because that's still, I think, and we'll get more into this in the conversation, there's a lot of legitimate talk of not just Tesla's kind of image issue and their brand problem, but also their products in some ways not being the leading edge that they once were. But in some of those areas, like the software, the Sentry mode, it's still actually a really compelling product. It'd be the best case that we even have in America of competing with the Chinese brands, which also do the technology really well. Maybe Rivian comes the closest. I'm not sure. I think you sit in a lot more EVs than I do these days. So I'm not sure if you can comment on that. But what do you think in terms of the experience of just being a Tesla owner? I know the app is a big part of it. Do you think they still just lead there over everyone else?
I would say I haven't recently experienced a Rivian to the fact where I like had the app and had daily usage, but I've had it with other cars before, played around. Like even my dad has a Toyota as his company car, and I've used the app on that a fair amount. And at least compared to the legacy automakers, like Tesla's app is just unrivaled, I would say. Just with how easy it is to use, how I can click on a map, see exactly where the car is, turn on the AC, honk the horn, roll down the windows, just all this functionality that happens really quickly. Because I had a Mini Cooper in the past, which is BMW's app, and you would literally press the unlock button on the app and you would wait about 30 seconds and then the car would unlock. And I'm like, I don't know how this is useful because like you got to like pre-plan whenever you want to unlock the car on the app. But no, I just say with the software updates with the app, it's really simple to use. If I want to make a service appointment, I can do it right through the app. Granted, the service appointment's going to be like a month out because there's just a lot of Teslas on the road and they don't really have the capacity to fix them all, but you got that. And the app is, I would say, really good. I would like to try out a Rivian. I'm talking with Rivian to get a Press R1T or R1S. So I will keep you updated after I test out one of those. But at least compared to the legacy automakers, I think just there's so much functionality, and that functionality improves over time with software updates. Just the benefit of having a software-defined vehicle.
Absolutely. And then like just for people listening, and I think neither of us are really Tesla fanboys here, but I just want to emphasize that like this whole idea of a software designed vehicle and how buzzy that made sound, like just recently the Hyundai IONIQ 5N, an amazing vehicle, right? Like it won multiple SUV of the Year awards, just really well put together vehicle, probably even better build quality than a Tesla, but it's got issues because Hyundai doesn't like their ABS unit in this vehicle has been glitching out, and people who have been left foot braking on the track have it keep accelerating and not stop. And that's or I think it can stop, but the ABS system turns off. So they have to manually modulate the brakes. Very bad thing, right? They can't patch that over the air because the firmware is made by the supplier who makes the ABS unit. And so like when I talk to people about this is like the whole technology Silicon Valley ethos, like this is what Tesla pioneered and they still do it really well. And it's amazing that when you control so much about the vehicle, you can do things like that. Hypothetically, I think if Tesla had an issue like that, there's at least a better chance they could do it over the air. And you see this often where there's a news story, there's a Tesla recall. And like recently there were Cybertruck panels falling off because of glue. Okay, you can't fix that in software. But when it comes to a ton of these other issues, let's say there's not enough nags in the highway assist driving mode, they can just patch that over the air. And that's a huge thing because it sounds like table stakes. We all experience it on our phones, and yet so many vehicles still can't do that for a majority of their systems because they're not like all one computer brain. They're all just a bunch of separately programmed systems sourced from dozens of suppliers.
100%. And I guess going back on that, I recently spoke with a few Rivian engineers in the software field to talk about like their zonal architecture and stuff. And I think the real interesting thing is just having, and Tesla and Rivian both do this, is just having software and hardware both in-house, or at least controlling all those aspects of it. Because especially, yeah, when you have like software, it's, oh yeah, we have a body controller or whatever, and has software from a supplier that doesn't really have any interaction with us. And it's then, of course, you're going to need to bring the car in because there's no control over that one area of the vehicle. And just having everything built in-house, software, hardware, just that perfect match, just like what Apple does with their products. That's why they're so elegant to use, is you really end with a functional, usable, and like updatable product.
Yeah. And I think like some brands, because Rivian's not all the way there yet, but they're getting there, right? They've homologated so many of or they've unified so many of their systems into fewer zones to the extent that like Volkswagen gave them a bunch of money to basically fix that. For speaking of your Mini Cooper, right? Like the Germans, I think, are the opposite of this, where they have as many bespoke systems as possible. And if you use a technology in a German vehicle, it actually like feature parity wise, okay, Mercedes can have all this cool technology, but it's integrated in such a confusing way. And again, like objectively, Volkswagen fired their CARIAD team. They had to team up with Rivian specifically because this was a core competency they didn't have. So that's an interesting area where I think both the Chinese companies, but also Tesla and Rivian in the US really are paving the way. But now let's get into like a product more deeply, just as a car, right? Like the Model 3 and the Model Y, like I really hope like people keep listening and don't tune out because I think we're Tesla fanboys. But like when they came out, they were legitimately the only vehicles of their class. We were just talking before we recorded. You could get a Chevy Bolt and a Nissan Leaf, both fine vehicles, more affordable. But a Model 3 offered like 250 miles of range. You could get the all-wheel drive trims, later the performance model. It had supercharging, right? Tesla built an amazing charging network. Of course, it's opened up. Now there's Iona, now there's more. But when it came out, it was unprecedented. And yet today, it seems the competition, the Hyundais of the world, the Rivians too, but even at the other price points with like Ford and the Mach-E, lots of brands have somewhat competitive products. Do you agree with that? Do you think the competition has largely closed the gap?
I agree. I would still, at least in terms of a software-defined vehicle, you still can't really get one of the model. Because don't get me wrong, I love the Kia EV6. I love the Hyundai IONIQ 5, IONIQ 6. I think they're amazing cars. But just like the software in that cars are just objectively not that great. You have just a really kind of antiquated system, even using like even using the like infotainment system to build out like a road trip to get like EV charging stops. It's like, I feel like I'm like in the 1980s, like launching a missile strike in like somewhere, because it's really difficult to use.
Yeah. And quality is not that nice. Like just the little things, right? Like the things where it almost feels like, okay, I got a $200 Android phone versus I bought an iPhone. Like it kind of feels like that.
And then, so that's kind of my take. But then there's always people who like just don't really care that much about software. Like they're coming from a 2015 Ford Escape and now they're buying a Hyundai IONIQ 5. And for them, the IONIQ 5 is going to be light years better than their 2015 Escape. So that's always something that I like to keep in mind. So I would say on the software front, Tesla is still unrivaled for the value. Model 3, Model Y specifically. But a Model Y right now is, I believe, $48,990, and then add on about $1,700 in destination order fee. So it's $50,000 we can really look at. Yeah. And you can get a new Mach-E for like $39,000. And granted, new Mach-E is going to be rear-wheel drive. It's going to have fewer features, etc. But it's still over $10,000 cheaper than the Tesla Model Y. And I think some people are obviously willing to take some trade-offs for a much less expensive vehicle. Like I would take less range, less performance for a car that's $10,000 cheaper, because that's totally different price bracket.
And let's just think big picture too. If a lot of people are in the position of, I've long thought about this even before the Elon stuff really blew up, but even when he bought Twitter, there were people who started to like have Teslas, they were left leaning, and then they really were turned off by Elon Musk. That's happening at a much larger scale. Our friend John Voelcker wrote a great article about this and many other phenomenons on Inside EVs. We'll link it. Can Tesla survive Elon Musk? And I think it's an amazing feature. We're just going to crib a little bit from it, but also I think it summarizes lots of the vibes going on right now, which are that people like EVs, they're left leaning, but they don't want a Tesla. And they're like they do have options now. Like you said, maybe it's worse in some of the software areas, but like someone could conceivably sell their Model Y and get into a Mach-E, into an EV6. And okay, some things might be a downgrade, but hey, if their previous car was a Ford Escape or something, or if someone's never experienced an EV or they didn't care too much about the technology side of it, then as a car, they have so many other viable options.
I agree. And that's another thing to consider too is like there's people right now who are buying brand new Toyota RAV4s. And we can just look at the technology in that car and just be like, okay, what? This is just not that good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think in that regard, it's like, yeah, Monkey is going to be like an iPhone as the RAV4 would be a BlackBerry.
And let's also talk consumer behavior because like lots of the RAV4, the whatever, like I think almost everyone listening to this, even the non-technological savvy, will be familiar with in their car or in rental cars, any car in the last 10 years, just plugging in their phone and doing the mirroring, right? The CarPlay, the Android Auto, which Tesla and Rivian famously don't do because they're so proud of their own software. But other brands let you do that kind of as an escape valve. And some people really like that, actually. They're like, that's all I need. I just need my phone on my car with the basic text messaging interface and whatever. That's all voice, right? I don't need any of the other fancy stuff. Maybe they don't know what they're missing, but lets the other brands have a release valve. It's okay for Hyundai and Kia to have crappy built-in software. I'd argue it isn't for the route planning and those other things. But for so many people, the way they're used to using a car, it's okay for them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And like me personally, not a huge fan of CarPlay, but there's a lot of people who love it. And you always read on the forums how people like want CarPlay so bad in their cars. And yeah, I think it is a good way if you're not putting a lot of effort into your own R&D, just put in CarPlay, just license it out. It works great. And there's a lot of people who are content with that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We live in such weird times, but just going through Volker's article here, there's damage that Tesla's suffering on many fronts. Let's start with just like Cybertruck and the whole cultural political moment that represents too. Like we said at the beginning here, right? That's much more of a polarizing vehicle than a Model 3 or Model Y. And objectively, like whatever you think of Cybertruck, if you're listening to this, it has not been a sales success. Like Tesla's producing more than they're selling. It's depreciating really quickly. It's not the complete disaster that some people want you to believe it is. Like it's still Tesla. They can sell a lot of vehicles, but they haven't sold nearly as many as they said. I think they said they would sell 200,000 a year for the first year. Generously speaking, maybe 50,000 have been sold so far. And they've had all the recalls and some of the quality issues. So like ambitious product, some actually cool technology in there, but gosh, it has not been a commercial success.
Yeah, and I think too with the Cybertruck is because I think like a year or two ago, I was reading the Walter Isaacson biography, and basically like the design process was Franz von Holzhausen just shared a bunch of designs for the Cybertruck, and Elon's like that one. And with a stainless steel truck, I'm sure if this was made out of traditional vehicle materials like aluminum, like in Model 3, Model Y, this truck could have gotten to the market a lot quicker, because you don't need this radically different manufacturing process. And a lot of its issues are sort of the fact that it is a stainless steel vehicle. So that's why you kind of get some of those panel gaps and stuff like that. And yeah, it's like I've driven the Cybertruck. I think it's pretty cool, but it's a little unfortunate how polarizing it is nowadays because
and it's expensive too. Like people like an R1T and the other electric trucks, Cybertruck's the best selling of them all. And maybe it's the only one that makes a profit because I'm not sure the Ford Lightning and the R1T are making a profit. But just as if I'm a consumer, those products in many ways are actually just better. They're better trucks. They can tow better. They just have bigger batteries that give you better range in the case of GM Silverado EV.
Yeah,
so like
100%
to the extent
Silverado EV.
To the extent that EV trucks are a thing in the US, and that's divisive, obviously. They can't do every duty cycle yet. But to the extent they're a thing, Cybertruck is like almost more of a halo beacon for people who really love the stainless steel and the design and the Tesla fanboys than it seems to me, at least personally, to actually be a truck.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's better more capable options, I guess. Because I still think like some trucks are pretty cool novelty, but then again, it's like the Silverado EV is less expensive. even the LT comes pretty loaded with like ventilated seats, Bose audio for whatever that's worth, because sometimes Bose is not that great in GM products, but that's an aside. But you get like a good array of standard features, Super Cruise, etc. And that truck has way more range than the Cybertruck does and better charging. So just something to consider for people who are interested in buying one.
And I have to say, because this is we're all about American EV jobs, all of these EV trucks are made in the USA.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
But I don't think this, because especially when the Cybertruck was announced, there were no electric pickup trucks on the market. So it could have been, I guess if it was expedited somehow, it could have been
in classic Tesla fashion, though,
Yeah.
the time they announced it and the time it came out, huge delta.
Yes. And I guess that can go back to Elon Musk, just as leader, because he's always keen on offering very expedited timelines that are in some cases not realistic. And I think that kind of devalues the brand in some ways.
Perhaps, yeah. Like, even if you are an Elon fan, like, objectively, you look at his timelines, and he's even said this, right? He's not often accurate about the timelines. He's optimistic, is the most generous way you could put it. But the other thing is, like, the next big bullet point in the article here is the core products, not even Cybertruck, but Model Y and Model 3. Really, I'd argue the only two Teslas that matter, because many of the more expensive ones, they're arguably stale. Now, I know you disagree with this. They've both been refreshed recently. It's like what the auto industry calls a facelift, but there's a lot of improvements. The suspensions are nicer. There's better interiors. Do you think that they are boring, though, compared to the other new exciting stuff on the market?
Yes and no. So I think there's like cool novelty vehicles like the Dodge Daytona EV. I think that's pretty cool. People probably disagree with
The
me.
market does not agree.
Yeah,
No.
which
Yeah.
is why I'm going to get a cheap lease deal on one. So that's still on the table. But
Yeah.
anyways, I still think it's a cool, like, it's an electric coupe. It's got all this stuff, but it's a novelty that, again, you're right, doesn't sell. Whereas the Tesla Model Y is still, last year was the best selling EV in the country. I think Model 3 is still an incredible product. And I guess just recently I experienced the new Model 3 Performance, and it's a great vehicle. Huge improvements over the last one. Like, you got much better suspension, all this stuff. I can still see why some people may not want one, because the side profile is still pretty much the same as the 2017 model. But just in terms of all the improvement they've made to an already pretty great product is pretty notable. Like, sound system, I would say, is probably one of the best I've ever experienced in any car. And I've tested a lot of sound systems before. Burmester from Mercedes and Harman Kardon from BMW, etc. Just lots of good sound systems, and this one is really good. The connectivity is still great, and still for the value, it's like $47,500 with the tax credit is a pretty hard value to beat. But I can still see why people won't want to buy one, just because it still looks similar to the original one.
And also, like, to your point, like, the sound system is nicer. It's in many ways, if you were just going to buy a Model 3 anyways, get the new one because it's so much nicer. And of course, newer model year, it will take longer to depreciate, but it is a good product refresh and continues to be an excellent product. And yet there's nothing to excite the imagination, in the sense that even before Tesla was politically controversial like they are today, let's remember in 2015, 2016, when people were pre-ordering Model 3s, Tesla was still not a super proven car brand. They had to get their factory off the ground. There was a lot of trust people had to overcome, those barriers to not buying from a traditional manufacturer. Like, the first American manufacturer since Ford, technically, to not go bankrupt, right? Like, in over 100 years. That's a big deal. And that was a big leap of faith people took because the product was so excellent. And I don't think there's any way you could say, despite the fact that, like, objectively, yeah, Model 3 and Model Y are excellent, they're not inspiring enough to get people to go over that hurdle, where I'd argue, like, even though Tesla has this, like, now right-wing Elon image that's repulsive to so many EV buyers, if the product was like something genuinely next generation or compelling the way it used to be, I think lots of people would just hold their noses and still buy them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And yeah, when we look back, like in 2017, there were basically 3 other mainstream EVs on the market at the time, which are the BMW i3, which I love, but not everyone else does, the Chevy Bolt, and the Nissan Leaf, which I think people probably like the least out of that group. And the Model 3, even the 2017, even with some of its flaws, it was still light years better than any of those cars could ever be. Just this car had literally no compromises compared to the other ones. No range compromises, no performance, etc. And yeah, now it's like there's a lot of really good other EVs in the same price range. And yeah, I guess that is a good point because like still there are a lot of benefits to getting a Tesla over a non-Tesla, but I would say that gap is much smaller. And you have
Right.
so many more options. And sometimes the options will fit buyers' needs a lot better. Maybe you want a affordable electric crossover and you don't have 50,000 to spend on a Model Y. Now you can get Mach-E for 39. Maybe you could get a Hyundai Kona if you want one of those for less money. And a lot of these
Yeah.
automakers are offering really good incentives too. Like Kia is doing $11,000 off the Kia EV9, which is a huge price reduction for a three-row electric SUV, a product that Tesla doesn't even offer besides Model
Yeah.
X. But obviously, Model X is, they're still different products at different price
The
points.
EV9 is more practical for a family. It's a better vehicle in many ways. It's not maybe as luxury, but look at the sales numbers. There's a lot more
Yeah.
EV9s out there than there are Model X's. That says more than anything. The next big thing that Volcker mentioned in his article is like this has come up in the news in the last year. There's been so many reports of the $25,000 Tesla, the Model 2, the Model Q, whatever you want to call it. And then it's a roller coaster where like Tesla goes from saying, "Oh, we're making this," or off the record they'll say this, but they'll intend it to leak out, and then they'll go and say, "Oh no, that's just robotaxi. That's our two-door self-driving vehicle with no steering wheel." It hasn't launched, and this is fascinating because if Tesla was poised to like uniquely dominate any niche, it would be this, right? Because they can make
Yeah.
EVs in the U.S. cheaper than anyone else. And they could probably strip down to Model 3, make it a little smaller, a hatchback, and I don't know. Seemingly, they could get away with it in a way that no other competitor seems to have that kind of cost advantage because, especially now, they're dealing with much more tariffs, way more imported parts, way more supplier source parts. Theoretically, Tesla could do this, but they haven't done it yet. And there might be a refresh, let's say the Kona EV, to make it much more compelling. The Bolt EV will come back from the dead with a new generation. Like, it seems like Tesla's missing out on this cheaper vehicle.
I totally agree. And it's funny because it's if Tesla had prioritized this vehicle as opposed to like the Cybertruck, which I guess if the Cybertruck's profitable, that's good, but the sales aren't great. And I heard
Yeah.
that they were laying off some people working on the assembly line. That was a few months back though. But yeah, it's if there is a product that people would overlook Elon Musk and I guess Tesla's current brand image for, it would be this product. It would be an affordable EV that's around $25,000 with good overall specs, supercharging access. Of course, it would. It's Tesla, but just checks all those boxes. That would be an incredible product for Tesla to offer. And yeah, I guess when they keep talking about it and you don't see any progress on it, it's not a great look at all. So yeah, it would be really cool if that product would come out at some point, but it's not out now. And there's a lot of more affordable options that can compete with other Tesla products.
Yeah, and the argument that like robotaxi will be that vehicle is just, I don't know, whatever you think of Tesla full self-driving, the idea that it's ready for prime time in the US everywhere is still just, I think, stock bull fantasy.
Yeah.
There's no other way around it. Arguably, Tesla full self-driving, it's overcome a lot of things, and maybe it's the best system of its kind on the market. I don't think look at what I think SAE, so many organizations of like objective people who measure standards have said this is not a level 3 system. This cannot take over. And crucially, Tesla has not said that they're going to take over liability the way that Mercedes will do in some very limited contexts on the road. So like the idea that people are going to flock to the robotaxi and buy it doesn't even make sense because if robotaxi makes sense, as it's a fleet vehicle, as they're going to demo it in Austin, Texas this summer, supposedly. We'll see what happens with that. I think you know how I feel about it based off how I'm talking about it, but that's not a substitute for a cheap Tesla.
I agree. And I was pretty disappointed when I saw the release of that because I was like, oh, is this going to be the new $25,000? But still, like that
Yeah.
design, that would be cool. If you get a product like
Put a
that with a
steering wheel
steering
in
wheel, that would be
it.
like an
Yeah.
actual car. Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's if they already have some manufacturing lineup that can
Yeah.
manufacture that body, that would be cool. But we don't
But
have that.
and this is bad for Tesla's bottom line, but great for consumers. I think John has this amazing point in the article. If you want a $25,000 Tesla, just buy a lightly used Model 3.
Yeah.
And you can do that right now. And so a Tesla is so host in this way of like, why would you like, okay, we've talked about how the new Model 3 and the Model Y are good, but the new Model 3 has been out for a year. There's plenty of them already that are used. And if you're willing to go to get an even cheaper car, you can get a several model year old Model 3 that will still be a perfectly fine vehicle for really cheap. In some cases, like below $20,000.
Yeah. And that is the question, because it's like you can buy that right now, which is a great deal. And I guess with any car, just buy used because you're going to be saving a lot of money. But specifically now with Tesla, it makes a lot of sense to buy a used Tesla because they happen to depreciate a decent amount. And I guess we can even look to other Tesla models. It's like right now you get Model S's. I was looking like 2021 refreshes in the mid 30s, which is crazy because people spent like $90,000, $100,000 on those. And yeah, used is always the best option.
Right. But
And
like used is a great option, particularly when a product matures in the
yes,
case of Tesla's lineup. And a several-year-old one is still a great vehicle. In the case of Toyota, for instance, just refreshed the BZ4X, you and I's
yeah,
favorite vehicle. And that it's the new one's a lot better.
yeah,
But if you were to buy the old one, you're getting a substantially worse EV that takes an hour to fast charge and all this stuff. And so, but the Teslas have been good for so long that like you can totally buy an old one and get away with it in a way you can't do with all the other brands that have only just very recently figured out how to make a somewhat compelling EV. The next point is neither of us have too much expertise into this, but we're definitely going to cover it more here on directly current. It's just the China angle. Like, and just looking at sales, like Tesla seems like they're notably the only American brand that's ever really had success in China in this era. They kickstarted the EV wave in China. They were the first big EV brand, but the domestic brands, BYD, Neos of the world, they're just taken over. And Teslas are boring in China compared to all of the products that are coming out. And it seems like the sales are crashing.
yeah. There's so many options in China right now, and everyone kind of talks about the low prices. I guess yeah, everything is a lot cheaper in China. I'm not sure if that would actually translate to like the US prices, but regardless, you can get really competitive EVs in China for not a lot of money.
Yeah.
And there's some really cool Chinese EVs out there that I think are really worthy of considering over a Tesla because you've got software-defined vehicle. A lot of these, you have really cool features and you have vehicles that are just frankly different and cooler than a Tesla. So
They charge way faster. They have like tons
yeah,
of screens inside. They have some, in many cases, especially in China, better self-driving systems. They can swap their batteries. There's all kinds of things going on. It's a brutal auto market to be a supplier in, but it's an amazing time for the consumer there. And then crucially also with Tesla is that their charging moat in the US with the supercharger network is now no longer a unique advantage to them. You can charge Tesla superchargers with many other brands now. Many of them are open to the public, either with built-in adapters. You can buy an adapter from your automaker. I do that for my Polestar. It's amazing, right? I have no qualms about supporting Tesla's charging empire because there's so many great Tesla chargers, and it's provenly more reliable than the other networks, which are catching up in some ways, but doesn't matter. You can use all of them. And so in that case, it's like good for Tesla. They make more money, but that's a commodity business. That's not an amazing business to be in. They're just selling electricity.
yeah, and yeah, you can get some really good. Yeah, I just think with the charging network as a whole, it's open up to everyone now. And for me, like buying the Dodge Daytona charger, whatever it's called, I wouldn't have any issue if I could charge that on the supercharging network. And
Yeah.
it's like previously, if you would look back, like especially in like California where there's so many EVs, it's like it is hard to find an Electrify America station that's empty. And it's really unfortunate just because there's so many EVs on the market. And then you pull up to the EA station and some Chevy Bolt just sitting there charging up to 88%, just slowly going. And there's not a lot of chargers, but there's tons of superchargers. Superchargers are really easy to come by, but now it's not a buying factor decision. And like you can literally buy a new Hyundai IONIQ 5 with an NACS port on it right now.
It'll just
And
plug in with no
yeah,
adapter to a Tesla
no
station.
adapter.
Yeah.
And that's really awesome. So yeah, I think definitely with charging and there's still like some benefits to having a Tesla because you get less expensive energy rates when you're charging. But I think for someone buying like a new $40,000, $50,000 Hyundai IONIQ 5, they probably don't care that much that it's going to be
Yeah.
10 to 15 cents a kilowatt hour more
Yeah.
expensive.
So last thing I want to ask you is someone who's been in a lot of cars and maybe you'll have a Daytona next week, who knows, right?
Yeah.
Like your eyes are always on the EV market. Do you think like Tesla's both their product and their brand obviously are so soured at this point? Do you think it's recoverable? Do you think they can excite your imagination again? Do you realistically see that happening? Let's say Elon gets uninvolved from politics or he puts his eye back on Tesla or something. I don't think there's any realistic argument that he's going to leave Tesla, but regardless of what some people might hope for, it's not, I don't think it's going to happen. But what do you think Tesla could do from like a product and company standpoint to excite you again as a consumer?
I think they got to divert away from Elon as much as possible. And I think we see this with just like the company, because there's so many people working at Tesla. That is one thing to always consider. And you have, especially Tesla sometimes releases like videos on YouTube, like showing like their technology and stuff. And those are the people really running Tesla. It's like Lars, the director of engineering, Franz von Holzhausen, the director of design. It's like these are the people steering Tesla in the direction, because it's even with Elon, it's just like logistically, and I guess like just viewing this objectively, it's like, how do you have any time for Tesla when you're managing Doge, you're the also CEO of SpaceX, Neuralink, all this stuff. It's like, how do you have any time to pay enough attention to Tesla? And I think, I guess just like looking at it, it is pretty unfortunate that Elon's like actions and stuff is providing this negative image of Tesla, because it's like, I think the people who are like really the ones driving Tesla's brand are not Elon Musk. And I think for Tesla, it's just continue making good products and diverting that attention, because I don't think Elon Musk will step down from Tesla. I think it would be the best for Tesla if he would step down and let someone else take charge. But yeah, I think the products are still really great, and I think there's still people who appreciate that. But I think for a lot of people, the whole Elon Musk thing is a huge turnoff. And even if Elon Musk does step down, it would still always be known as the company with Elon Musk.
And here's where I disagree with you. Personally, as a consumer, I agree. I think it'd be better if Elon, as the super distracted CEO, actually would step down and someone else would take over. But let's also factor in reality. The stock price of Tesla is so locked into Elon Musk and of him as a visionary who can uniquely pilot their way to full self-driving and all these enabling technologies, and he's the world's best carny, right? Like he's hyped up this brand so much. I think it actually would be a financial disaster if Elon stepped down, even though like you and I know there's plenty of smart people at Tesla who can manage that company, and it's almost like the company runs itself in many other ways. When the new Model Y came out, I think Elon tweeted about it like a week or two later. It's like, did you just learn about this? But I don't know. And Volcker's article makes this point too. Like the two are so joint. Obviously, his financial prospects are tied to Tesla too, but I think they're inseparable. I think there's just no realistic scenario where they separate.
So I would, my counter argument to that would be, I guess if we look back at Apple, because Apple and Steve Jobs, but if Steve Jobs stepped down from Apple and put in Tim Cook, you go up to any person, they have no idea who Tim Cook is. You're like, who is Tim Cook? They probably won't know who he is. And Tim Cook, like right now, Apple, I believe, is recently it's been at the highest share price it's ever been. So I think if Elon Musk would step down, we would probably see a temporary decline in the stock. But like when you think of Apple, people focus on the products. When you look at Tesla, people think of Elon, but I think over time it could shift more towards the products. And I think as a leader, it's like Tim Cook is like someone who you would want to be as a leader of your company. Just no one really knows about him. He seemingly does a great job at his role. And I think there's a lot of engineers, executives at Tesla who could take that over.
Yeah, I agree with you plausibly. I just think also in terms of just as long as Elon Musk exists as a person and the board of Tesla is made up of who they are made of, it seems very unlikely for sure. But I don't know, it's so fascinating, and we'll just have to continue following it. And I also can't wait to see if you do get that Dodge Daytona for super cheap, lease it a couple $100 a month or something. People can listen to your podcast, The Current Review, that you do. You have tons of people on from the auto industry, from the YouTube journalist sphere. You just had Jason Fensky from Engineering Explained. So if people like the deep dives and stuff, they should absolutely check that out. Thanks so much for coming on, Andrew. Any more last thoughts you have about Tesla or the just EV market right now in the US at this really precipitous time?
Yeah, I think just looking at the EV market, it's just really interesting seeing where all the prices are going. And there's great deals out there used specifically. You can get great deals on Teslas. You can even get great deals on non-Teslas too, if that's not what you want. But yeah, I think like right now is a great time to buy, especially with these tariffs too, because we don't know what's all going to happen with car prices, etc. And like right now you can get like a used Genesis G80 EV, which is a really nice sedan, $80,000 MSRP. You can get them for 30 grand used now, like 2023s.
Right.
Like we're not even talking about old
Yeah.
cars. And I don't know, maybe there's a chance that the market could tick up a little bit if all new car prices get like $10,000 more expensive.
Market, yeah, might absolutely heat up. It's so weird because last month the auto industry was supposedly going to be exempt from these tariffs, and now we're in the inverse situation where all tariffs are paused except the auto industry and China. It's great for this podcast. It's great for us, but gosh, I hope the U.S. auto industry survives. I even hope Tesla survives, and it's going to be fascinating to see what's next. But thank you so much for coming on, Andrew.
Definitely. Thanks, Max.
All right, that's all for this week in Directly Current. Thank you so much for Andrew to joining us. You can check out his podcast, The Current Review, and we'll link it in the description. Also, for this podcast, we're going to be back in 2 weeks with a very exciting guest to discuss the tariff situation in the automotive industry and how that is affecting real people. And boy, that news seems to change every couple of days, so I hope it's up to date when we release it. Check us out in the meantime at evpolitics.org to check out the work we're doing, both at the EV Politics Project and our initiative, the American EV Jobs Alliance. Also, for this show, your feedback is welcome, so please feel free to reach out to us using the email in the episode description. Anyhow, see you in 2 weeks. I've been Max Patton. Thank you so much for listening.